There is a quiet, devastating realization echoing through the households of hardworking people all over the world right now. You wake up early, you go to work, you pay your taxes, you try to put a little money away at the end of the month. You do not live a life of extreme extravagance. You are, by all traditional definitions, doing everything exactly the way you were taught to do it. You are playing by the rules. And yet, every single month, the walls seem to be closing in just a little bit more. You look at the price of real estate and it feels like a cruel joke. You look at your grocery receipt and you wonder if there has been a mistake. You look at your savings account, and despite the fact that the number is slowly creeping upward, the actual power of that money, what it can actually provide for your family, is shrinking right before your eyes. Spent my entire life analyzing the architecture of wealth, the cycles of the global economy, and the invisible forces that silently transfer money from the working class to the ownership class. I am telling you today with absolute mathematical certainty that you are not imagining this struggle. You are not failing because you lack discipline, and you are not falling behind because you buy a coffee on your way to the office. You are failing because the rule book you were given has been burned. We have entered a period in economic history that I call the 2026 wealth wipeout. The macroeconomic environment has structurally, fundamentally shifted. The strategies that built the middle class in 1996 or even 2016 are no longer just obsolete, they are actively toxic. If you continue to cling to the financial advice of the past, you are walking blindfolded into a buzzsaw. The good habits you were taught, saving paper currency, relying on a single salary, staying out of the equity markets to avoid risk, are the exact mechanisms that are currently engineering your poverty. Today, we are going to have a profoundly uncomfortable conversation. I am going to tear down the illusions that keep you trapped on the treadmill. I am going to expose the 7 financial sins of the modern economy, the behaviors that look responsible but are actually destroying your future. And then I'm going to replace them with the 7 virtues of the new capitalist. This is the exact unyielding blueprint that the truly wealthy are using right now to shield their fortunes from inflation and multiply their net worth while the rest of the world panics. This will be a long, dense, and demanding masterclass. It requires you to abandon your ego and look at your balance sheet with cold, clinical objectivity. But if you have the discipline to stay with me until the very end and the courage to execute the protocol I am about to share, you will completely rewrite your financial destiny. Let us begin by dissecting the beast. Why is the rule book broken? The entire global economy runs on currency, dollars, pounds, euros. For decades, the middle class was told that the ultimate symbol of security was a pile of this currency sitting in a bank account. But in 2026, we are living through the consequences of an unprecedented expansion of the fiat money supply. Governments around the world have printed trillions upon trillions of units of currency to fund deficits, fight crises, and service insurmountable national debts. When you print money out of thin air, you do not create new wealth. You simply dilute the purchasing power of every single unit of currency that already exists. It's the physics of supply and demand. If you have a pitcher of lemonade and you pour a gallon of water into it, you have more liquid, but you have destroyed the flavor. The central banks have poured oceans of water into our money supply. This is the invisible tax. It is a systematic, unlegislated confiscation of your stored labor. When you work for 40 hours, you trade your finite, irreplaceable human lifespan for currency. If that currency is depreciating at 5%, 7%, or 10% a year in real terms, the system is silently stealing your life force. This is the macroeconomic reality of 2026. You cannot vote it away. You cannot complain it away. You can only adapt. And to adapt, you must purge the 7 sins from your life. The first sin, the hoarding of melting ice, saving fiat currency. The greatest financial sin of the 2020s is the belief that cash is a safe investment. The financial industry loves to sell you the illusion of the high-yield savings account. They proudly offer you a 4% or 5% return on your money, and you feel brilliant for taking advantage of it. But you must look at the math. If your bank pays you 4% and the real rate of inflation is rising at 6 or 7%, your safe investment is generating a guaranteed negative real return. You're paying the bank a 2 or 3% fee every single year for the privilege of holding your money while it evaporates. Cash is not an asset. Cash is a melting ice cube. If you leave it sitting in the sun, it will disappear. The wealthy do not hoard cash as an investment. They view cash purely as a temporary holding tank, a logistical tool used to facilitate daily transactions, and a strategic reserve of ammunition waiting to be deployed when the market presents an opportunity. The virtue that replaces this sin is the acquisition of scarcity. You must transition your mindset from a hoarder of paper to an accumulator of hard, productive assets. You must own things that central banks cannot print. You must own productive businesses, real estate, and essential commodities. When the currency depreciates, the nominal price of these assets adjusts upward. They are a mirror reflecting the devaluation of the money. If you do not own scarcity in 2026, you will be crushed by abundance. The second sin, the worship of the wage, trading time for money. From the time you are a child, you are asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? The expectation is that you will find a job, secure a salary, and trade your time for a paycheck until you are too old to work. In a stable economic environment, a salary is a wonderful thing. In an inflationary environment like 2026, relying solely on a salary is financial suicide. A salary is linear. It is tied entirely to your physical presence and your endurance. You cannot work 25 hours a day. Your earning potential has a hard, biological ceiling. Furthermore, wages are the last thing to adjust to inflation. Corporations raise the prices of their products immediately to protect their profit margins. They raise their employees' wages only when they are absolutely forced to, and almost never enough to outpace the true cost of living. If your only source of income requires you to clock in, you are entirely exposed. The virtue that replaces this sin is the cultivation of equity. You must break the link between your time and your money. You must build or acquire systems that generate cash flow whether you are awake or asleep, healthy or sick, working or resting. You must become an owner. When you buy a broad, low-cost index fund tracking the S&P 500, you are buying a fractional ownership stake in the 500 most powerful corporations in the world. You are hiring millions of employees, brilliant CEOs, and aggressive sales teams to wake up every morning and generate profits for you. You do not have to go to their offices. You do not have to manage their payroll. You simply collect the equity growth and the dividends. You must systematically convert the linear income of your salary into the exponential income of your portfolio. The third sin, the normalization of indenture, consumer debt. We live in a society that has normalized financial servitude. The marketing apparatus of the global economy is designed to make you feel inadequate and then offers you a credit card, an auto loan, or a buy now, pay later scheme as the magical cure for that inadequacy. The middle class has been trained to completely ignore the total cost of an item and focus exclusively on the monthly payment. This is the architecture of modern poverty. When you finance a depreciating asset, a $60,000 luxury car, a vacation, a wardrobe, at 15, 20, or 25% interest, you are mathematically destroying your future. Compound interest is the absolute law of financial physics. When you invest, it builds empires. When you borrow for consumption, it builds prisons. There is no legitimate investment on earth that will guarantee you a 25% annual return. Therefore, if you are carrying credit card debt while trying to build wealth, you are bailing water out of a boat with a massive hole in the bottom. The virtue that replaces this sin is the fortress balance sheet. You must view consumer debt with absolute visceral disgust. It is a parasite feeding on your life force. You must attack it with unyielding aggression. Sell the car, cancel the vacations, cut the subscriptions. You must liberate your monthly cash flow from the banks.
The truly wealthy use debt exclusively to acquire cash-flowing assets, like a mortgage on a rental property where the tenant pays the interest. If the debt does not put money in your pocket, you eradicate it from your life. The fourth sin, the tyranny of the outer scorecard, ego spending. Why do people buy things they cannot afford? They do it because they are playing a game they cannot win. They are trying to signal their status, their success, and their worth to people who do not genuinely care about them. This is the ego tax, and it is the most expensive tax in the world. The middle class spends its capital trying to look rich. They buy the mansion with the crushing property taxes, the designer watch, and the prestigious labels. They derive their self-worth from an outer scorecard, the opinions and validation of their peers. But maintaining that illusion requires a staggering amount of free cash flow. It leaves them incredibly fragile. One missed paycheck, one medical emergency, and the entire facade collapses. The virtue that replaces this sin is the mastery of stealth wealth. The truly financially sovereign operate by an inner scorecard. They don't care if their neighbor thinks they are successful. They care if their spreadsheet says they are secure. You must find absolute, unshakable peace in looking completely average. You must take the thousands of dollars you are wasting on the ego tax and quietly, invisibly, deploy them into productive assets. The feeling of absolute financial autonomy, the knowledge that you could walk away from your job today and survive for a decade, is infinitely superior to the dopamine hit of driving a financed German luxury car. Independence is the ultimate status symbol, and it is invisible to the naked eye. The fifth sin, the frenzy of hyperactivity, gambling disguised as investing. Because the middle class feels the agonizing pressure of inflation, they become desperate. They realize they are falling behind, so they look for shortcuts. They open brokerage accounts and they start trading. They buy options. They chase speculative cryptocurrencies. They buy meme stocks because a stranger on the internet promised them a 1,000% return. They check their portfolios 20 times a day. They react to every headline on the financial news. This is not investing. This is the casino, and the house always wins. When you engage in hyperactive trading, you trigger the three silent killers of capital: taxes, fees, and emotion. You pay capital gains taxes, you pay spreads to the market makers, and inevitably, because you are human, you panic and sell at the absolute bottom, only to buy back in at the absolute top. You act as the liquidity for the professionals.
The virtue that replaces this sin is masterful inactivity. The greatest investors in history are incredibly boring. They do the deep, difficult work of identifying outstanding businesses with durable competitive advantages. They buy them at a fair price, and then they do the hardest thing in the world. They sit on their hands. They let the decades do the heavy lifting. They ignore the macroeconomic noise. They ignore the political theater. They understand that the stock market is simply a mechanism for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient. You must automate your investments, delete the trading apps from your phone, and let the miracle of compounding perform its absolute magic in silence. The sixth sin, the illusion of the brand name pedigree. We have been sold a lie that the ultimate path to security is a piece of paper from a prestigious institution. Millions of young people are entering the 2026 workforce carrying mortgage-sized student loan debts, holding generic degrees in subjects that produce absolutely zero tangible economic value. In the age of artificial intelligence, globalized remote work, and algorithmic efficiency, the market is entirely indifferent to your pedigree. The market does not care where you spent 4 years of your youth. The market is a ruthless, highly efficient calculating machine that asks only one question: can you solve a complex, expensive problem? If your degree does not give you the ability to solve expensive problems, it is a liability. The debt you incurred to acquire it will act as a permanent, crippling tax on your future cash flow, delaying your ability to invest and build your own empire. The virtue that replaces this sin is the construction of the personal moat. You must become a monopoly of one. You must acquire a combination of skills that are scarce, highly demanded, and incredibly difficult for AI to replicate. You must lean into complex human negotiation, high-level strategic sales, advanced technical engineering, or specialized trades. You must become a learning machine, aggressively consuming books, courses, and mentorships that offer a direct, calculable return on investment. Make yourself so undeniably valuable, so structurally indispensable to your industry that you possess ultimate pricing power over your own labor. The seventh sin, the echo chamber of despair. The final sin is psychological. It is the tendency to surround yourself with people who validate your excuses. If you spend your time with people who constantly complain that the system is rigged, that the economy is unfair, and that it is impossible to get ahead, you will inevitably adopt their mindset. You will absorb their victimhood. You will stop looking for opportunities and start looking for scapegoats. Poverty is contagious, but so is wealth. The virtue that replaces this sin is the ruthless curation of proximity. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You must audit your peer group with the same intensity that you audit your bank account. You must seek out individuals who are operating on a higher frequency. Find the people who are discussing ideas, dissecting business models, and building their own fortresses. Find the people who hold you accountable, who challenge your limiting beliefs, and who force you to elevate your standards. If you cannot find them in your physical environment, find them in books, in history, and in the writings of the great minds who came before you. Protect your psychology. It is the engine of your entire financial future. We have torn down the mirage. The 7 sins have been exposed. The economy of 2026 is a sorting mechanism. It is mercilessly dividing society into 2 distinct classes, the owners and the renters, the untouchables and the dependents. If you continue to hoard depreciating paper, trade your time for a stagnant wage, finance your ego with high-interest debt, gamble in the markets, rely on generic credentials, and surround yourself with victims, the system will slowly and legally confiscate your entire life's work. You will spend your final decades in a state of quiet financial terror. But you now possess the blueprint for sovereignty. You know that you must widen the mathematical gap between your income and your expenses with extreme prejudice. You know that you must build a liquidity fortress of survival cash so that you are never forced to make a decision out of desperation. You know that you must funnel every single surplus dollar into the acquisition of productive, cash-flowing assets, and you know that you must hold those assets with masterful, unwavering patience. This transition will not be easy. It will require a level of discipline that 99% of the population simply does not possess. It will require you to look foolish to your neighbors in the short term so that you can be unassailable in the long term. It will require you to say no 1,000 times a day to the endless temptations of consumerism. But I promise you this, the pain of financial discipline weighs ounces. The pain of financial regret, staring at an empty bank account in your twilight years, weighs tons. The era of easy money is over. The era of the great repricing is here. It is time to stop playing the game by the old rules. It is time to stop being the liquidity for the rich. It is time to build your own empire brick by boring brick. The choice of which side of the divide you will stand on is entirely yours, but you must make that choice today. Because in the game of compounding wealth, the clock is the one asset you can never buy back. Subscribe to this channel. We are going to continue navigating this volatile economic reality together. We will ignore the macroeconomic noise, we will focus exclusively on the mathematical truth, and we will build wealth that survives any crisis and lasts for generations. Your future is waiting to be claimed. Let's get to work.